Hello, I'm Brianna Baugh, and I did my policy summary presentation on the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Okay. So what is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act? The IDEA is a federal special education law that ensures free and appropriate public education, or FAPE, and protects the rights of children with disabilities and their families. The act was originally enacted in 1975, and its purpose lies in helping assist schools in providing the best possible care and specialized services for their students that may have different needs, as well as prepare these students for future education, employment, and independent living if they so desire. Okay. So some of the major components of the act is that one, it is broken into four major sections, and each of these sections plays a very different and unique role in making sure that these children with disabilities receive all of the rights, protections, and supports that they're going to need through K through 12 and sometimes even into higher education such as college. So part A of the act is kind of the foundation. It like sets up what kind of classifies as a disability, what kind of services that they are responsible for providing. It kind of sets all that language, and it's more of the legal framework for everything. And then it has its ramifications that make it universally applicable, or at least for our country, so that we can have consistency there. And then Part B of the Act mainly focuses on the provisions. So this is like the most wide known and the largest section of the Act because it goes through a wide range of services that are provided and different ways that, like, one, care teams and educators, and in our case, social workers, can help meet the needs of the children that they serve and their families, which we will be going into depth in this presentation. Okay, so within these regulations, part Part B states that schools must conduct comprehensive evaluations in all suspected areas of disability, and these evaluations should take place every 3 years. So this is set up so that we are sure that, one, we're making attempts to have every child's needs met to the best of our ability, and two, having these assessments be culturally and linguistically sensitive to every individual being assessed so that there is no, or trying to fill in those gaps, because there are still gaps, which we'll get into those disparities also. And so for this part, everything that is happening in Part B is indeed shared with the families. They have rights to records and they can dispute decisions, and they are as much a part of this as any other member of the care team, because obviously it is their child and or student that is being affected by the changes that are made. So students with disabilities also under this part of the act cannot be disciplined in ways that deny access to their services or that go against any of their MDR or their or stem from their disability and possibly unmet IEP needs. So this part mainly focuses on ensuring that children with disabilities receive individualized and legally protected educational experiences that supports their individual learning and hopefully long-term development. Then going into Part C. Part C focuses on early intervention. So this is kind of getting the test and evaluations started as soon as possible, kind of to make sure that no kid falls under the radar in terms of any special needs or special accommodations that they might need before they start school. So, in this, there are individual family plan service plans, and the plan focuses on including everyone, not just the child, because it's supposed to strengthen and meet the needs of the family and provide goals for the child, services and supports, things like therapy, counseling, and home visits. And it's supposed to be a widely like coordinate and collaborative plan. These plans are also family centered and are very, very focused on helping build the child's growth in different social skills and skills that they will need to take part in school. Then there is service delivery. These services can be in the home, in the child care settings like daycares, or in other natural environments like the school, of course. So then when it comes to the time of starting school, we see that early intervention dramatically improves the developmental outcome because it empowers the family by giving them the tools and the room to have their voice heard and an advocate in their corner to support their child throughout school. So at age 3, there are teams that will help the families transition to Part B services and ensure the continuity, of the care. And so early intervention will dramatically improve developmental outcomes and make sure that the child is ready to meet the challenges expected of them in school. So lastly, there is Part D, which is meant to improve the education of children with disabilities. And Part D funds efforts that support teacher and provider training, research and innovation, parent training and information centers, technical assistance, model demonstration programs. And this matters because having these supports and training programs help implement IDEA and ensure that all people involved in a child's care and education have access to evidence-based practice that goes along with their development. So here's kind of an overview of those things. So the key legal protections that are in place for a child with disabilities in a school setting are 1, FAPE, free, appropriate public education, meaning that all services are at no cost to the family and that they will be tailored to the student's needs so that they can make progress and it's not just accessible. Kind of going to get that more equity instead of equality for these children. And then LRE, or least restrictive environment, make sure that an education is inclusive with a child's non-disabled peers whenever it's appropriate and available to them, so that they aren't removed from general education settings, so as long as their needs are being met. An IEP is an individual plan with goals that serves to help the students with disabilities succeed in school by usually having measurable goals and accommodations. And then Child Find is schools doing those evaluation programs and making sure that they are seeing, finding, and evaluating students who may need the services. So having these protections in place overall increases the access to general education and also opens up and provides a space for possible needed therapies. The impact for children is really great in that it supports emotional and behavioral and academic growth and provides a sense of security in case of and enduring disciplinary action. These things altogether are shown to improve long-term academic outcome for these children, and it goes as far as expanding career readiness. And I kind of think that this slide particularly highlights how IDEA shapes a child's entire educational experience, because children not only benefit academically, but also socially and emotionally. And these laws kind of ensure access to services that will give them their protective rights and make sure that school social workers understand how each support connects to their student and as an individual and their well-being and their long-term outcomes and goals. Okay. So the introduction of this act also gives parents a good bit of legal rights and involvement with their child's education, as well as improving the communication with the school. And one of the main benefits of this is that it connects families to early intervention resources and supports that can help drastically reduce the stress of navigating services on their own and fighting systems that are in place and systemic inequities. So this creates kind of an opportunity for collaboration and advocacy and help families that might feel marginalized feel more empowered to kind of reach out for the things that they want for their children. And I feel that often families experience relief once they understand these rights under IDEA, but I do acknowledge that the process can still be overwhelming, especially for new parents, and this might be their first child in school. So, school social workers play a major role in reducing that stress and kind of building that trust and rapport with the family, ensuring that families are respected partners, and kind of making sure to acknowledge the systemic barriers that might exist for their client and how to bridge them in the way that's most suitable for them. And so that kind of leads me into my next point, the barriers and iniquities of this kind of system and the act. As much as it is trying to do, there are still places where it kind of falls short because there can be issues with delays in evaluations or certain students being overlooked for evaluations because I myself am somebody who is late diagnosed autistic and I have a physical disability. I have cerebral palsy. So I was kind of in and out of this system also. But then again, with that is a disproportionate identification of minority students, and this is primarily students of color as being special needs. And then there is also a common misidentification and or underidentification of English learners or non-English native speakers due to the bias or limited assessment tools that come with that, with the language barrier. And of course, there's always limited resources and staff shortages in areas like this. And that's why I think it's very important to get the information out so that more people can know. And then there is also the barrier of economic status in the places that we live. What schools have access to what things. It kind of affects how they will implement IDEA. So it it's a very strong act legally, but the reality of implementation varies very widely. So understanding these barriers as social workers will help us advocate effectively for a fair identification and culturally competent evaluations, and hopefully supportive interventions that don't pathologize students based on culture, language, or trauma history. Those are like things that we can look to fix going forward, I think. So then the role of school social workers, which we touched briefly here and there, but as a school social worker or as a social worker in a school setting, either way, it's our role to be a mediator between our teams at the school and the students' parents at home. Social workers are meant to utilize our skills to lead culturally responsive and trauma-informed practices and support behavior plans, FBAs, and disciplinary protections to guide students through transitions to adulthood. So these responsibilities are things like engaging the family, being an advocate, participating in evaluations, IEP planning, and providing counseling, crisis intervention, and possible mental health support. And so this is going to be a longer section, but implications for practice. There is a breadth of responsibilities that we will carry as school social workers, and there's a lot of cross-system collaboration. So our work will kind of help ensure that students receive everything they need, not just academically, but socially and emotionally, and that hopefully it's not too much of a burden on the parents. So that would be like the advocacy for the student rights and their equal access, active participation. We're supposed to contribute to the psychosocial insights that educators and evaluators might not see, and how they kind of integrate all these things into an IEP. So it's more of the person and environment. It's a holistic view of the child and not just their academic performance. Then we also are meant to ensure that the goals are SMART goals, functional, realistic, achievable for these children and for the teams that we're working with, because we're not more knowledgeable on the systems that may be preventing some of this progress for them. So there's also addressing the disproportionality bias, which is that racial disproportionality in identification and special education placement. School social workers help identify and disrupt discriminatory patterns by monitoring who gets referred and why. Like maybe if it's conduct disorders or something like that, and kind of getting more into the root of that than taking it at face value. And supporting the families through the special education process, because that can be a lot. It can be scary for somebody who might not know or understand like what it's supposed to look like. So we're supposed to understand those results and prepare questions for IEP meetings and kind of help so that people don't get overwhelmed and intimidated by all the legal jargon that will take place when setting up things like an IEP. Um, the transitions from early intervention to going into school, from school to adulthood also, and kind of building that community and space so that they will have a support group and support system as they continue to move through not only education but life, and then providing direct support to the students in things like group therapies, group social skills, individual therapies, behavioral intervention, support for things that might be going on outside of school, attendance, transitions, adjustments, collaborations with teachers to accommodate these things and make sure they're being followed through on. And this work is meant to not only improve academic outcomes, but mental health, behavior, and resilience to build also self-advocacy skills in our students. Then there is the aspect of trauma-informed care and culturally responsive practice. Many children who are eligible for the special education programs have trauma histories, may have things like housing instability or chronic stress, and we are supposed to integrate our trauma-informed approaches into the school environment. Then there's also making sure that we are open and collaborative and very, very on board with working with teachers and staff, because that is like a big part of making sure things go as smoothly as possible. So kind of talking about things like modified classroom environments or behavioral management strategies, because that does a lot for reducing student stress when everybody's on the same page. And then there is the monitoring and implementation of ensuring accountability, as we've also kind of touched on transitions. So even strong IEPs fail when they're not properly implemented because of this, we as social workers should monitor fidelity, identify breakdowns, and bring concerns to administrators to make sure that there's a way to prevent just paper compliance and make sure there's needs are actually being met. Because I've seen a few instances myself of the meetings being held and the talks happening, and then there was no actual supports for the students, and they were kind of left to fend for themselves a lot in, especially where I grew up was a rural school system. So, and then there is, of course, the piece of promoting school-wide inclusion and disability awareness. And that's kind of to try and shift the attitudes, maybe, about what it means to have a disability and kind of, especially in those younger years, normalize it for both the student with a disability and their non-disabled peers. Because then when you can see this other child as just a dimension of human diversity, I guess, is it's able to not be such a point of possible bullying or contempt. So overall, we are meant to be like the kind of connective tissue that will hold the IDEA vision together. And we are supposed to be there not only for our children, but for their families, and use our clinical skills and system level understanding to ensure that special education is not just a legal requirement, but a gateway to opportunity, dignity, and long term success. Okay, so this is kind of just an overview of all the slides kind of put together, which I don't think I'll have to go over so in depthly. But IDEA is super important for meeting the needs of disabled children and making sure that they thrive. And through the parts that it has, it is meant to create holistic lifelong support for children and their families. Families benefit from these legal rights because their active participation in decision making allows greater transparency and gives them the capacity and confidence to move forward with the school under the assurance that their child will be treated fairly, justly, and get the same level of education as all the non-disabled children. So, despite the systematic barriers that have a highlighted need for continued advocacy, we as social workers, with our cultural responsive practice and trauma-informed approaches, can be consistent professionals across all school districts and help make sure that the well-being of all students is being met as well as possible. We play an essential role in ensuring that IDEA is brought to life as serving as a mental health provider, crisis responder, and family advocate with IEP teams. And the work that directly supports students' well-being, behaviors, and developmental access, we are able to bridge that gap so that families can feel educated, informed, and empowered about the special education process. So ultimately, IDEA's effectiveness depends on the collaboration, empathy, consistency, advocacy, and values that a school social worker embodies in their everyday practice. And by upholding these principles, school social workers can help create educational environments where all children, regardless of disability, are valued, supported, and given every opportunity to achieve their fullest potential. So that was my presentation. I'm very thankful that you were able to listen. I appreciate all of the support through the semester.